All right, so this is video number 2. So this is going to talk about the Persians, the Phoenicians, and the Hebrews. So there's some vocab that you guys will have done. Okay, so Persia conquers Babylon. So Cyrus the Great conquers Babylon in 539 BC. He uses elite force of soldiers known as the 10,000 Immortals. The reason they had that nickname or that name is because they had an army that seemed to have 10,000 people, and whenever one would be killed, they would be replaced. They would literally take the dead body and drag it behind their defense line, and they would put another soldier in. So they would like substitute someone in. So even when troops were being killed, they would replace them. So there was really probably more than 10,000 people. But they had that nickname because if you were fighting them, it just seemed like they were immortal. Like there was always 10,000 troops that you were fighting. Persia controlled a huge area of land stretching from Asia to India. And the thing that's different, unlike the Assyrians or the other empires we talked about in the other video, is that King Cyrus, he was tolerant of other people's customs. And so he won a lot of respect from those that he conquered because he said, hey, you know what? You're part of my empire now, but you can keep your religion, you can keep your language, you can keep your statues, your temples, your churches, all that. You can keep all of it. You're just a part of my empire now. Where the other empires were charged tributes or things like that, he didn't do any of that. So a lot of people, respected him for that. So this is the Persian Empire. You can see it's huge. This is just the area we've been talking about as Mesopotamia. And this is the Fertile Crescent, just right here. You can see their empire stretched all the way from what is actually Europe across all the way into what is modern day India. So the Persian Empire was ginormous. Okay, thank you. Okay, so King Darius unites many. So Darius unites the vast Persian Empire. He isn't the direct successor of the previous king, Cyrus, but he's the one that we're going to kind of talk about. He creates a sense of peace. He had many cultural achievements. He was able to use the diverse customs of the vast Persian Empire and kind of blend it all into one society. He creates a bureaucracy, which essentially he like kind of splits up that huge empire into little provinces or states, and they had satrapies, which were like governors, but they were really more like spies. Like they were in charge but in secret, and so they kind of kept their finger on the pulse of what was going on in their little province, and they would report back to King Darius, and then he would use that information to decide how he wanted to rule over that area. Okay, so the Royal Road, this was the first highway. It stretched more than 1,500 miles. It was built to speed up communication between the distant parts of the Persian Empire. Darius creates this road, which he said it would create unity. He even created his own money, and he put his little face on it, coins, and kind of created his own economy. So he would mint his own coins, and then on that Royal Road, they would exchange the currency. You could buy and sell things. This is how far the road went. So you can see it went through what is now, this is Turkey, modern day Turkey. It spreads through what we consider to be the Middle East all the way into what is now modern day India. So Persia's new religion, so Zoroastrianism, arose in parts of Persia during Cyrus's rule. It was created by this Persian thinker, philosopher, Zoroaster. He stated that individuals were to be judged for their own actions. So your actions had consequences, essentially. He believed that there was both good and evil forces in the world. If you were good, you went to paradise. If you were bad, you would suffer eternally. This should sound familiar. This Zoroaster kind of is the basis of what most modern monotheistic religions are, which we're going to talk about in this presentation, where all the other empires and everything we've talked about up to this point have been polytheistic, where they believed in multiple gods. So Zoroaster is kind of way ahead of his time and was the initial person that kind of sets this precedent of you do good, you get good. If you do bad, you get bad. This is Zoroaster. So the decline of Zoroastrianism is Alexander the Great. We're going to talk about him later when we talk about Greece. Alexander the Great conquers the Persian Empire in 330 BC. Alexander had never lost a battle and was seen as the best conqueror in history. He was an extremely young leader in general. He was the son of royalty, and he had vast schooling. He was very knowledgeable, and he was a great soldier in his own right. So when he was put in charge of other soldiers, he flourished in that position. So after Persia was conquered, Zoroastrianism almost disappeared entirely. For the Phoenicians, they were peaceful sailors and traders. They had several colonies in northern Africa, Sicily, and parts of Spain to promote trade. They pretty much controlled the Mediterranean Sea. The Phoenicians create an alphabet. Their alphabet is directly influential to the English alphabet that we use today. The way it works is the Phoenician alphabet influences the Greeks, and then the Greek alphabet is what our alphabet is based off of. So there's a lot of actual similarities. So this is the Mediterranean Sea, and you can see these are their trade routes that they had, and they controlled the entire Mediterranean Sea. Like no one else was able to control the Mediterranean Sea like that, like they were able to. And this is their alphabet, some of the symbols. Now I know you're like, well, these don't look anything like what we have, Mr. Short, but look at M, L, K is backwards. You can see that there are some similarities. Okay. Okay, so the ancient Hebrews. So the Israelites or Hebrews were monotheistic. They believed in one all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful God. Their most sacred text is the Torah. It includes the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Torah states that God visited Moses at Mount Sinai and gave him 2 stone tablets with 10 moral laws, or also known as the 10 Commandments. So Abraham, he's seen as the father of Judaism. Hebrews believe that he made a covenant or a promise with God, and Abraham had 2 sons, one named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, and they become known as the 12 leaders of the Hebrew. So Jews are forced into slavery. So they were in Egypt. They had to leave their homeland. They were forced to go to Egypt. They were accepted by the Pharaoh, the leader of Egypt. But then a new Pharaoh takes over and he makes all Jewish people slaves. So Moses led the Israelites in their exodus or their exit from Egypt. He pretty much goes and negotiates with the Pharaoh, and he's like, hey, can you just let all of us go? And the Pharaoh's like, no, you're slaves. You belong to us. You're staying here. So Moses leads them away. And so the Jews move to different parts of the world. So they leave with Moses, but then they kind of scatter across the different areas. This scattering of Jews outside of Judea is known as the diaspora. Okay, and this is the legend is that Moses takes them and they have to cross the Red Sea. It was the only way, but they didn't have a ship or a boat or anything like that. So God splits the sea and allows them to walk through the Red Sea with the ocean on both, or with the sea on both sides of them. The kingdom of Israel was created around 1000 BC. Saul was the first king of Israel, and he's able to unite the 12 different tribes. Remember, Abraham's 12 sons, they're known as the tribal leaders. Saul was able to unite the 12 different tribes of Israel, and therefore he was seen to be fit to become the ruler. David and Solomon were his sons. They were the other kings of Israel, but they were not able to keep things as cohesive as Saul was. So this leads to the division of Israel. And so they split into 2 parts. You had the north and you had Judea and the south. And it was split due to disagreements over the 12 tribes. Who should become the next king? That was the big disagreement. Who should be the next king? Who should be the next leader? They couldn't decide, so it led to the split of the Israelite kingdom. However, Israel was eventually conquered by Babylon in 586, and Babylon was later conquered by Cyrus the Great in 539 BC. So this area is completely split and taken over by Babylon and then taken over by the Persians. Okay, so this is how it splits. You had Judea in the south and you had Israel in the north. Okay, so that is it for this section of notes. So make sure you answer the questions, the notes, questions, and then turn it in for today. And that's it. And I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, bye.